opportunity by the universe to serve the universe. Through me, the universe is serving the universe. And I'm just an instrument. That's all. I'm not doing it. The inspiration is coming from there. I'm just a tool which is translating the inspirations that are coming from deep within into my conscious mind, because that is from where they come, deep from that unconscious part of our being. That is from where our thoughts arise, our inspirations arise.
Hello, this is Daniel Johnson, MD, and thank you for tuning in to this special episode of Anecdotal Evidence, episode 20, Insight India 2016, with Siddhartha Krishna, and this is a lecture on an introduction to the philosophy of the Vedas. This lecture was given on March 19th, 2016, to our Insight India tour group. Our tour was led by Dr. Indu Arora, and our group consisted of 19 travelers and 3 staff. We were touring northern India for the purpose of seeing some great sights, but also to have an experiential tour where we learned from great teachers. And this was what I knew at the time, and I've come to know even deeper since. This was the most valuable part of my trip to India, was the experience of actually meeting the people of India, in particular some great teachers, and the opportunity to hear directly from them. And so I recorded some of these opportunities, and I'm going to be sharing them with you through my podcast as an attempt to share the experience of this trip, because it was and has been and will continue to be such a valuable experience for my own personal journey, and I hope those who are interested may find it valuable as well. So this first lecture was from Siddhartha Krishna, and this was given at the Omkarananda Ashram in Rishikesh, India. It's the same place where I delivered my dispatch from Rishikesh, which was episode 19. And you can check out the YouTube video for just a view from the second floor of the ashram, which sits right on the banks of the Ganges in Rishikesh, India. It's a beautiful place. It's literally right at the banks of the Ganges River, India's most sacred river. And it's up in the foothills of the Himalayas where the Ganges is still clean. The ashram is dedicated to the Hatha Yoga practice as taught by Iyengar, the great yogi who brought Hatha Yoga to America and around the world. One of the great yogis who is responsible for a great tradition. And so in the room there are many straps and props which are used to guide the yogic student in his or her asana practice for helping with adjustments, as Iyengar was such a wonderful teacher and implementer of this type of Hatha Yoga. But Siddhartha Krishna himself sat on the floor, as the rest of us did, for the lecture, and my little recorder sat on its tripod right in front of him, and he referred to it as a spider, because it looked kind of like a spider. And so when I reached out to him after I got home, I had to remind him that I was the one with the spider recorder, and that reminded him, and he was very kind to allow me to share this lecture in the public format of the podcast. Siddhartha's website, he is active on the web, and he can be found at facebook.com, Veda Bhakta, Vedabhakta. And he also has a Twitter feed, which you can find under Siddhartha Krishna. And so he's very up with modern technology, but he also is an incredible scholar of the ancient Indian philosophy of the Vedas, also sometimes known as the philosophy of yoga. I'm not really skilled enough to distinguish between the difference of these, but they're definitely related, and he is a world-renowned scholar. He's given lectures all over the world. He has a regular column in Australia's yoga journal, and people come from all around to hear his lectures, and we were very fortunate to get to sit in with him for these 2 lectures. And again, that's what I'm hoping to share with you, was this experience that I had, because I've gone back and listened to these, and there's a richness and a depth to his teaching that can be found in listening to these lectures. This first lecture is an introduction to the philosophy of the Vedas, which is a very difficult thing to encapsulate even in an hour and 45-minute lecture. And I think what you'll hear is that Siddhartha's history of scholarship comes through in the way that he speaks and in what he shares. Listen for how he describes how Rishikesh is a sacred place. Listen to how he describes karma yoga as the yoga of our actions and our deeds. And he also shares how much of his life and his life routines are dedicated to taking care of his elderly father, who we'll talk about more in the next episode as well. So without further ado, let's get right into it. This is Siddhartha Krishna lecturing, and I hope you enjoy it.
सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। So first of all, I welcome each one of you here to Rishikesh. place that has been a spot where individuals from the Indian subcontinent and slowly from different parts of the world have been coming in search of not something external, but in search of that which they could actually find wherever they were. But this place provided an environment, a kind of environment that was conducive to, and I'm saying was, which was conducive to be with oneself, to get away from the distractions and be with oneself. I thank Induji for bringing all of us together. The reason this place was conducive to this search, this being with oneself. Often when I think, what is so special about this place? Because, for example, if you go to Prayag, Allahabad, where hundreds and thousands of people every 6 years come together, take bath in the sacred waters. It's often promoted as the biggest religious gathering on earth, Kumbh Mela. The reason that place has tremendous importance is that because two rivers, on one side you have this river of wisdom, because the Ganga, she symbolizes wisdom, knowledge, understanding. It is the intellectual aspect of our being, this internal stream of understanding. This is what she symbolizes. And that is also because geographically, the scholars, those who practiced and followed the path of Dhyana Yoga, yoga which means union through knowledge, through wisdom, they lived on the banks of this river. And that is why she started to symbolize the river. She started to symbolize knowledge, wisdom, and she became, that is why we often refer also, for example, if in some place somebody is sharing a lot of knowledge, we will say Dhyana Ganga is flowing here, which means the Ganga of Dhyana, the Ganga of knowledge is flowing here. And on the other hand, just 100 kilometers towards the west, there is this Yamuna river which flows through Delhi and then through Mathura and Vrindavan, really the places where since centuries masters have come and lived a life of devotion. So that river started to symbolize devotion, the river of devotion, Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti, which means devotion, love, complete emotional involvement. That is the involvement of the heart, not of the intellect, not intellectual understanding, but emotional understanding. Emotional, not understanding, but just emotional being, complete emotional dedication. So on the shore of that river, that was practiced. Deep teachings related to that were developed. So she became, and I refer to her as she, because in India we look at these rivers as mothers. Mothers. Because the Sanskrit word for mother, which is matri, very similar to the English word, means that an entity who nourishes us, who nourishes us. And water, what can be more important for our life than water? So that is why it is very often in Hindi language that we refer to rivers as mothers, and then particularly these holy rivers as mother. So when these two rivers, the river of knowledge and the river of love and devotion, when they unite geographically, that is a place where a person can understand that I have come to this place not just to take bath in the confluence of these two rivers, but somebody with a little bit of deeper understanding, which is not something that we get by reading scriptures or listening to teachings, but the inspiration comes from within. When that meaning of that significance of these rivers becomes clear, then we start searching for those rivers within ourselves, and we realize that if this place out there is so holy, then what about if the same thing happens within me? When, first of all, that river of devotion which was flowing within me, and then that river of knowledge which was flowing within me, if they both can unite and become one, and both start flowing into the same direction, not separate, but become one, become united, then the volume of water increases, which is one of the idea of the Vedic masters, that let beautiful thoughts come to us from the whole world. Ano bhadraha kratavo yantu vishwataha. Let beautiful, because every time a new thought flows into our understanding, it increases our understanding, it widens our perspective. By resisting a new thought, we resist the possibility to widen our perspective. So that is what that place, for someone with a little bit of understanding, with a little bit of awareness, it inspires that. And that is why, because the ancient masters of the Indian subcontinent, they always searched for similar things in space and time. And then they tried to practice that in that space and in that time. That space which represented something that they wanted to happen within themselves, is that if they found a geographic location in accordance to that, for them that became holy. Or similarly, if a particular moment of time was conducive to something that they were trying to achieve within themselves, that time became holy and sacred for them. So Prayag, Allahabad is holy because of that. Then you're going to Banaras, Kashi, the one of the most ancient cities of India, the knowledge capital of India, of the Indian subcontinent. What was so special? What is so special? Kashi is not a place. Kashi is not a city. It is a deep inner concept. It is a deep inner idea to which that external geographic location makes us aware of. And what happens, and that is why there is not only one Kashi, one Banaras in India. If you go up here just around 150 kilometers in the north, there is Gupta Kashi, the hidden Kashi. If you go towards Leh Ladakh, around 500 kilometers into the north, you have the Kashi of Himachal Pradesh. So there are several Kashis in India. Of course, the one that you will be visiting is the most important one. But Kashi is an idea when a river flows, because the river usually in India flows from the north to the south, from the Himalayas to the ocean. In the Himalayas is the origin, and in the ocean is the final destination. And this is a natural flow. A river is the natural flow of our life, the natural flow of our awareness. But what happens in places like Kashi, that geographically, and I've confirmed this because now we have Google Map, so I could confirm it. And in all the Kashis that are there in India, every time the river makes a complete U-turn and for a while starts flowing towards its origin. Before then, it proceeds. So that U-turn, that in which it starts, that river starts to flow back towards its origin, which was a geographic location and became important for the masters, because this is exactly what they were trying to achieve within themselves, this continuous stream of thought, this continuous stream of awareness which constantly flows like a river. The yogic masters often compare this chitta, this mind content, as a river which constantly flows. Thoughts like a river, it comes from the unseen and proceeds into the unseen, and for a short while it is seen in front of us. Similarly, this continuous stream of thought arises out of the subconscious, which is unseen, flows for a while in our awareness, we are aware of our thoughts, and then again goes back into the subconscious as those subtle impressions. So it is like a river flowing in front of us. But the direction of its flow is always from in to out, in the sense that we are always aware of external things. We are always aware of the content. We are always aware of what consciousness is about. But do we ever become aware of the entity through which we are becoming aware? Ourselves? That consciousness itself, the light in which we see everything? We become aware of everything around us. But what about that light, that internal light in which we see everything? When we start thinking about that, when rather than these ever-changing external objects, which are the content of our thoughts, when consciousness itself, in which these thoughts come up, when that starts becoming a content of our thoughts, of our awareness, of our consciousness, then it is understood that now this stream of thoughts, this stream of awareness which was flowing from in to out, it starts flowing back from out to in. And that is the radical change of direction which we practice, which is really the essence of yoga. And because that happens geographically, in places like Banaras, they became holy. They became sacred because if, like when I question why are these places holy, then the answer comes by studying the geographical location. I realize why they are sacred, why they have been considered sacred since thousands and thousands and thousands of years, for this reason. But then when I think about Rishikesh, what is so special about this place? And exactly where we are sitting here, this is the place where gradually, as you can see, the river flows out of the mountains and into the plains. So we are sitting in a location where Ganga, which symbolizes the river of knowledge, the river of wisdom. Beyond this place, the region, today it is easily accessible, yet not the least dangerous. It is still dangerous. I mean, just 2-3 years ago, there were these big floods and around 10,000 people suddenly were swept away. 10,000 people got killed. So, but the areas have become accessible today. But just think 30 to 40 years ago, when, for example, when my father, as a young boy of 22 years old, left his home and came to travel into the higher Himalayas, he had to walk on foot. There were no roads, he had to walk on foot. So beyond this, the region was considered pretty inaccessible, very difficult to reach. So this is the location where the river of knowledge flows from the inaccessible, difficult to reach area into the region which is accessible. So the point of Rishikesh is that the masters here in Rishikesh, all the noble masters that have lived since centuries, may it be Swami Shivananda, Swami Vivekananda, Swami Ramatirtha. And I'm saying these names because these names have had some influence on particularly the American public. They have traveled to America. Swami Vivekananda is well known. Swami Ramatirtha also traveled to the United States towards the end of the 19th century. And Swami Shivananda's yoga became well known due to Swami Vishnudevananda. So these were just 3 of a countless number of masters that have lived here, and their mission was that on one side we have this inaccessible reservoir of wisdom. It is inaccessible only in the sense that it requires a lot of effort and a lot of time that a person needs to dedicate, first of all, to study it. And then studying it is not enough. That is intellectual understanding. That also that requires a lot of time and a lot of effort. But more important than that is to actually live it, to practice it, and then to shape one's understanding of the master's teachings in the light of one's practice, and then deepen one's practice in the light of the wisdoms of the masters. So like this, when a person reaches that wisdom, then it's not a kind of knowledge that is dependent on books, on a particular book, but it becomes a living knowledge, a living wisdom, a wisdom that is fully alive, because it is a wisdom that does not exist in letters or in ink, but it is a wisdom that exists in a living entity, in a living person. And that is why whenever the masters speak of wisdom, tatsvayam yoga samsiddhaha kalena atmani vindati, through the practice of yoga, gradually as a person acquires perfection in the practice of yoga, gradually with patience he finds that wisdom within himself. So they don't say in the books, in the teachings of particular masters, but just within one's own self. That is where that wisdom has to be found. But this requires a lot of time, it requires a lot of dedication. Individuals dedicate their whole lives to it. That is the only thing. Even just studying the teaching requires years and years together, and then to practice it. Therefore, it becomes quite inaccessible. Yet, the masters that lived here were trying the same thing that this river was doing, that she was flowing out of the inaccessible terrain and flow into the accessible terrain, flow into the homes and villages of the country to nourish them, to provide life to them. In whatever way, as the river flows into those lower regions, she gets polluted, she loses that freshness, she loses that cooling effect which she has here. But still, whatever, still she leads, she carries that life within her and has been sharing it with others. The same thing the masters here were trying. Individuals were coming from the different parts of the country, and for them the masters were trying to make this knowledge as accessible, to present it as easily as possible. So that was the reason that this city known as Rishikesh became important. Induji asked me to say some introduction on the philosophy of the Vedas, and while I was already describing this, I already talked about two quintessential practices: devotion as a means to acquire unification, union in one's life, and knowledge and understanding as a means to acquire unification in one's life. These two practices. And the third one, which is in fact the first one and the very fundamental one, the most important one, in which lies the very foundation of these two practices, and which really is the essence of the Vedic teachings, is Karma Yoga. The yoga means a method, a means of union, when karma, when our action, our work itself, we do it, we learn to do it in such a way our duties, our work, that it starts becoming a method, a means to find unification, peace in one's life. So that is the idea of Karma Yoga. So Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. And the teachings of the Vedas which are available today, and again the masters there, they make it beautifully clear that this collection of teachings which is available today as the Vedas in front of us, that is only just like a handful of wisdom that has been presented, but the whole mountain of wisdom has to be found, has to be discovered within. The work of these teachings is only to show us, to give us some practices, to inspire a kind of life that is conducive to search for that wisdom, that meditative wisdom within. Once upon a time, a person came to a master living here, and as it is very often, people come from outside and think, these masters sitting in the caves, they can tell us something, everything, or extraordinary. And he had read about enlightenment of the Buddha. So he came to the master and said, "Master, what can I do to become enlightened?" He thought for a while, laughed, and said, "As little as you can do for the sun to rise. As little as you can do for the sun to rise." Nothing? I can't do anything? Is that what you mean? Then why do you have all these classes of asana, pranayama, japa, kirtana? Why do you do all these things? That is just so that you are awake when the sun rises. The sun will rise naturally. But how many of us actually look up and are ready to greet it, the entity which fills up our world, which was in dark, which was in complete darkness, the entity which fills it with light? How many of us actually are awake to greet it, to do Surya Namaskaras, which is beneficial for ourselves? If we do Surya Namaskara, it doesn't benefit the sun. It doesn't make him happy. He's happy anyway, shining all the time, bright. But it will make us happy, joyous. So these practices are not to give rise to enlightenment, but just to awaken us, to wake ourselves so that something that is as simple as happening actually every moment of our life when we are awake. The message of the masters is very simple. Pratibodha viditam matam. if someone just has understood that which could be understood in every act of understanding, because no action, no act of understanding, no instance of understanding is possible without the light of that consciousness. Every cognition, every act of cognition, every instance of cognition happens in the light of that consciousness. So they just wish to make us aware of that with the help of with which I, or rather that is what I am, which becomes aware of everything. So rather than becoming aware of something out there, their purpose, their journey is an inward journey to become aware of one's self. So if somebody would ask that in a nutshell, what is the philosophy of the Vedas? In a nutshell, it is what the Upanishads state as Atmanam Vidhi, know thyself. And beautifully, I mean, it is a very ancient idea and a very cross-cultural idea. The ancient Greeks had this on the oracles, the oracles at the Delphi, they had it written there. The same is the message here. And so the journey that a yogi takes from where our awareness is right now in the external world to, first of all, if I can use that word, to pull it back to ourselves. And by ourselves, what do we mean? Rather than not even thinking about the grand concepts of the self that are there in the Upanishads, pure consciousness and all that stuff. Whatever we understand, just this physical self. What we understand is the very tangible self. My hands, my legs, my body. Just to use that as an object to focus on, so that our awareness, which was scattered in the world all around us, it comes back and just is, or to be with one's own body. That is the very first step. Pranayama, meditation, all that, as a person goes deeper, it is later, but just the very first step, what the Upanishads call Annamaya Kosha, this layer which consists of matter, this layer which consists of the food and water that we take in. This layer, just to come back to this layer. And that is what the very first step of yoga, asana, enables us to do. We could practice asana without this understanding. If that is what we want to do, we can do that also. But then it will be not yoga, it will not even be asana. Then the Sanskrit word, the correct Sanskrit word that we should be using for these postures will be vyayama. Vyayama just means extension, to stretching. Then it's just stretching the body, which is good. I'm not saying it is bad, it is wonderful. It is wonderful to stretch one's body for the sake of good health, healthy body. It is beautiful. But that vyayama becomes asana. Asana means to sit. Asana means something that enables us to sit, that enables us to settle down. And then do we ask the question that, okay, now I'm sitting in Siddhasana or in Sukhasana, sitting in Sukhasana. So, okay, this is an asana, this is a sitting posture. But if I do headstand, why do I call that Shirshasana? Or if I'm doing a standing posture, such as the triangle pose, Trikonasana, why do I call that an asana? That's not a sitting posture. But that is why, because the definition of the masters of asana is not sitting posture. It is any posture that allows us to sit within. That allows us to be with ourselves, that allows our consciousness to sit within this physical self, which sometimes the master refer to as the city, because it is a city in which trillions and trillions and trillions of cells, each of them a living entity, lives, and they have their, and everything like a city is in here. It has even 9 gates, no less than 9 gates. So sometimes it is referred to as Pura, which is the Sanskrit word for city, and that is related to the idea of Purusha, the entity which resides within the city, that consciousness which resides within the city, Purusha. And sometimes the master also refer to it as the home, Geha, because Geha and Deha, they sound very similar. Geha means home and Deha means body. So we often say about the wandering masters who wander around, because this was one of their practices, that they did not live for more than 3 days in one place. They used to wander around in search of knowledge from where they could get it, and when the opportunity was to give, they gave it, and when the opportunity was to receive, they received it. Sometimes they were students, sometimes they were masters, they were teachers. So for that, they were traveling around. So then they used to, such masters are often described as those who have only their bodies as their homes, which means they have no other home to live in, but just their own body is like their home. So that is what asana enables us to come back. The awareness which was scattered in so many things and which remains all the time scattered in so many things. When we do asana with understanding, with our attention completely focused within our body, and asana makes it easy, particularly initially an active asana approach, because we have to stretch different muscles. So we can use that stretch of our muscles, that strain on our joints, or the breathing that is taking place. Different things can be chosen, different objects can be chosen, and our awareness can be directed to that. And with that, we can start training our attention for deeper states, deeper stages of meditation. And this was an idea which we find in the Vedic teachings, Trirunnatam prapya samam shariram, when the masters speak about practicing meditation, they speak about being aligned in 3 places, being completely straight in 3 different places in the in the lower part, in the torso, in the neck, and then in the head. So this complete alignment, and this can only come, otherwise we remain collapsed all the time. This only can come when we are aware of our posture. And from there, asana practice unfolds. But it has its seeds in the philosophy of yoga itself. So like this, whether we call it meditation on the physical part of ourselves, whether we call it asana, which means a tool or a means to sit within ourselves, or we call it yoga, which means, that is why also we call it yoga, because one of the meanings of the word yoga, anything that we do as a means to acquire that unified state within, that is called yoga. So when we practice asana for that goal, we call it yoga. When we practice pranayama for that purpose, we call that yoga. When we practice anything that we do, when we work for that purpose, we call it karma yoga. When we evolve a devotional heart, a heart filled with devotion with that purpose, we call it bhakti yoga. When we strive for knowledge and wisdom for that purpose, we call it jnana yoga. Every time the word yoga is used, it is used for that purpose. And this is, again, the idea of yoga itself is really Veda and yoga. They are two words, but in essence, they are one and the same thing. What today we find in the word yoga is a very practical approach, is a very practical means to experience what has been expressed by the masters in their teachings, which are known as the Vedas. The foundation of, if at all I can say something about yoga philosophy, this would be the most important statement, that the very foundation of the Vedic teachings, because the Sanskrit word for philosophy is darshana. Philosophy means love for knowledge, but darshana means vision, experience. So if I'm talking about Vaidika darshana, about the teachings of the masters which incorporates in it their own experience, then what was the foundation, what was in the foundation of that experience which they have expressed in the teachings? They don't only express their experience, but they have also expressed the practical steps which leaded them to that experience. And those practical steps are what we know as yoga today, what we call asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dhyana, meditation. These different stages, Ashtanga yoga, the 8-limbed path of yoga, the 8 stages of yoga. That's a very practical, step-by-step description of the practices that they practiced, which enabled them to enter within, to be within themselves, to be in the world within, and then express these teachings in words, at least by the latest dates ascribed to these teachings 3,500 years ago by modern Western Indologists. The traditional view of India, of course, believes that they are thousands and thousands of years old. And even as far as I understand, the Western Indological view. It is just that 3,500 years ago, the teachings were put together in the form in which they are found today. But that doesn't mean that each one of those teachings, because even within those teachings, you can see that some teachings are relatively modern, then they talk about the ancient masters, and those ancient masters are talking about their ancient masters. So it really goes back into extreme antiquity. That's all what can be said. But the very foundation of that lies in yoga, and that is where the word yoga has been most potently used in this collection of the most ancient teachings. When they speak about the fire of knowledge, they say that this fire of knowledge, which burns away, which eliminates the darkness of ignorance, that fire of knowledge or that light of knowledge arises in this statement that Sadhinam Yoga Minvati, where the word yoga has been used, that it is in the unification of our actions and our thoughts, which means our understanding and the work that we do. When these two, and this is beautiful because it's a very simple teaching, but it encompasses the very practical and at the same time also the theoretical aspect of yoga. On one side we have this theoretical aspect of yoga, the deeper philosophical teachings of yoga, and then the very practical aspect of yoga. And when these two are united, then that wisdom, that light of wisdom, is to be found within. That is what the masters say there. So like this, karma yoga, bhakti yoga, and jnana yoga, if I would be to present the quintessential path of the Vedic teachings, it starts by describing karma yoga, by which it understands to do one's work in, first of all, to engage in good deeds, in noble deeds, in beneficial deeds, which are beneficial to ourselves and to others. Because if we don't engage in beneficial deeds with understanding, with awareness, then whatever will happen naturally. And the point that the masters make is that our body, our mind, our speech cannot be without work. This is movement, action is the very principle. It is the principle of the whole universe. Everything depends on action. Everything depends on movement. Whether it is the stars, the sun, the planets, this earth, or our body. Even when we are asleep, a lot of movement is going on within our body. And in fact, nidra, sleep, in the understanding of yoga, is not the absence of the various states of mind, but it is a state of mind for which the mind has to be active to produce it. So it's a very active state to produce even the experience of sleep. The mind has to be active, has to work. So action is the very principle of our being. It would be very unnatural to suppress action. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work because action happens naturally. So the best thing is to engage in noble, righteous, good deeds, beneficial deeds, so that the harmful ones can be avoided. beneficial deeds come with understanding. Whatever happens without understanding, in the darkness of ignorance, it can be beneficial, it can also be harmful, because it is done without understanding. It can be both. But when it is done with understanding, when it is done with awareness, then it becomes beneficial. So the first step that is how the idea of karma yoga unfolds, that first of all the masters, they speak about beneficial actions, how to perform beneficial actions. They inspire to perform beneficial deeds, deeds that can keep us engaged in beneficial things, so that we don't have time to think about harmful things, to speak about harmful things, and to do harmful things. So that is the first step. Then in the second step, they introduce the idea of sacrifice. Sacrifice is very important. Sacrifice in the sense that something in which we have the sense of possessiveness, something about which we think that this belongs to me. To sacrifice means to give it away, to share it with somebody else. That is the fundamental idea behind yajna, behind sacrifice, because one of the teachings of the masters is that we think that we nourish ourselves by taking in. That is what we think. We always want to grasp things. If I will have this, I will be just fabulous, perfect. This bit of knowledge, it's on every level. We are always accumulating, on the level of wealth, physical wealth. On the level of fame, we want more and more fame, we want more and more money, we want more and more things, we want more and more information, Constantly we are striving for that. That is also very beautiful. But deep inner development happens by doing the opposite. Spiritual nourishment, when they speak about inner nourishment, external nourishment happens through this. We have to eat fruits, we have to eat our food to be externally, physically nourished. We have to gather information to be intellectually nourished. But then to go deeper within, that kind of nourishment does not happen by taking in, but that kind of nourishment happens when we learn to unload, when we learn to give up, when we learn to share with others. Tena tyaktena bhunjitha. Learn to nourish yourself by giving up, by sharing with others. So then the second step of karma yoga is to do something as a sacrifice. Sacrifice in the sense that something in which we have a sense of possessiveness. Even that simple thing of yajna which people do in India, they burn fire and then they pour oblations into it. Swaha, swaha, swaha. What does that word swaha, swaha mean? I eliminate my sense of possessiveness in this. Till now this belongs to me. Now, so if a person would in those moments start thinking about these words, he would realize what the masters are trying to convey in every aspect of the life that they created on this continent. So that is the second step of karma yoga. And whenever something great is achieved, it is always achieved with the principle of sacrifice. We have to sacrifice something to achieve. A human being can achieve anything in one's life, but for that one also has to be prepared to do the sacrifice, to give the cost which is there to achieve it. But again, you see, the idea of sacrificing something for something greater has come. So this is still the second step. The third step is to work selflessly. That is what Karma Yoga's essence is. Selflessly in the sense, for no selfish purpose. That we just work for someone else. And that happens. That is where now the confluence of devotion, the confluence of love has come into. Bhakti Yoga has started to merge into Karma Yoga. Because when love comes into the picture, then we start doing selflessly, naturally. Then we don't need the masters to tell us. A mother, no one needs the masters to tell a mother to do what she does so selflessly for her child. Nobody needs the masters to tell a lover whatever the lover does in love for the beloved. No one needs the masters there. So when love comes, when love flows into that action, then it becomes selfless on its own. When we do something out of love, then we don't even have to think that, now I'm doing this selflessly. No, it happens naturally. That is the third idea of Karma Yoga. And because the masters in their description, they categorize things so that it can be described easily. But the idea is actually that these are gradual stages. Now when love flows in, we do it selflessly. What happens then? We want to do it for others. We want to do it for those whom we love. And why should our love be limited to someone? That is not real love. Not real love, that is not universal love. Let me say it like this. Also, that is real love. But it's not universal love. It's not the love that the masters are speaking, in which we choose, that this person is so loving and so kind, beneficial to me, and that is why I should love this person, and that is why I love this person. This person doesn't care, and therefore why should I care? And this person is very, very bad all the time with me. So, that's not real love. That is not universal love. Universal love is all encompassing, as when the masters, they express it, Ayam Nejaha Paroveti, this person belongs to us, this person belongs to our group, and that person belongs to someone else's group. We always make, whether it is because of religion, because of our ethnic identity, because of our identity with a particular nation, with a particular group of people, but we always create these divisions. There are some who belong to us, our people, and then there are some who are those, the other ones. So always we create this division. The idea of Dhyana Yoga is to bridge this division, to smash into pieces these walls that which are not somewhere out there. It's not the wall of Berlin which has to be broken down, but it is the wall of Berlin, the walls of our hearts, which are there deep within our hearts, through which we create these divisions. The idea of Jnana Yoga is to break them into pieces so that our devotion, our love can become universal. So that is when Jnana Yoga also flows into our Karma Yoga. Then our action is not only inspired by love, but it is inspired by universal love, the kind of universal love that the Vedic masters describe. I am Nijaha, he belongs to me, Paro Veti, and they don't belong to me. Ganana Laghuchetasam. These are the calculations of those who have a tiny little heart, who still have not worked on expanding their heart, on making their heart bigger. But those who have worked on expanding their heart, those who have meditated on infinity, and meditation on infinity is again from the very basic asana practice. If we look at the teachings of Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras, he speaks about meditating on infinity within one's asana practice. So when the mind starts becoming comfortable with the idea of infinity, where there is no end, no divisions, because divisions are finite. What is finite has divisions. Divisions will be finite. What divisions can there be in the infinite? In Ananta, where there is no end, because divisions have always an end, but when we have negated that end altogether, then from where can those divisions come? So when our understanding has expanded like that, then Udara Charitanam tu Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, for them the whole earth, Vasudha, the whole earth. And earth, the Sanskrit word that has been used here is the mother that gives us everything that we require to live. That is the very literal significance of this particular name for the earth. There are many words in Sanskrit which can be used for earth, Prithvi, the expanded one, so many different words. But this particular word, Vasudha, Vasu means wealth, Vas means to live. Everything that we need, we require to live, she has it within herself. She can give it. And so this whole earth becomes like one family for such a person. So if I would say that what is the quintessential message of the Vedic teachings is that this understanding should make our love universal, and that universal love should inspire our actions. Then that karma yoga is what the masters call the action that a person does for loka sangraha, for the benefit of all, for the benefit of everybody, without any consideration of caste, creed, national, religious identity, but just for the benefit of all. That is called loka sangraha. And then the deepest idea of karma yoga, we can see how jnana yoga and bhakti yoga, they are not different paths that, like sometimes people, I practice the path of bhakti yoga. Oh no, jnana yoga is not my path. No, our path is the path of jnana yoga. No, they are all, that is the very approach of a synthesis in which each one of the aspects of yoga is synthesized into one, because ultimately yoga is one. There is just one yoga. There are not 10 types of yogas. There is just one yoga, and each aspect of yoga just deepens our yoga. It strengthens our yoga. So the last stage of karma yoga is when everything that we do now, noble deeds, sacrifice, action done with selflessness, then action done inspired by universal love, but still the last thing that remains is this shell of the ego, that I am doing it. I am doing it. I am doing these good works. I'm doing these beneficial works. The last step is to overcome that as well. That I'm being given this opportunity by the universe to serve the universe. Through me, the universe is serving the universe. And I'm just an instrument. That's all. I'm not doing it. The inspiration is coming from there. I'm just a tool which is translating the inspirations that are coming from deep within into my conscious mind, because that is from where they come, deep from that unconscious part of our being. That is from where our thoughts arise, our inspirations arise. They arise into our consciousness. I'm just given these tools to translate it into this external world, but I'm not the doer. So when a person gives up the sense of agency and just, what the masters would say, expresses the will, the desire of the universe, that is the last state of Karma Yoga, the deepest states of Karma Yoga. And these are not stages that maybe the kinds of words that I was using, we should. It's not that we should, but they are very natural states. As a person starts walking on this path, gradually, like when a person sows a seed, yes, a seed has to be sown, it has to be watered constantly, it has to be nourished through different ways, but one cannot force that seed to sprout. That happens naturally. Then the seedling, when the small plant comes out, and then it takes time, it gradually unfolds, and then ultimately a moment comes when a beautiful flower, suddenly one day when we wake up, that flower is there, that beautiful flower is there, which then makes our home extremely beautiful. But this is a very gradual process. We cannot force it to happen. What we can do, we can just provide the circumstances for that to happen. And that is what the Vedic teachings, whether we call it the philosophy of yoga, or whether we call it the philosophy of Vedas, or whether we call it the practice of yoga, this is what these things do. They provide an environment in which that can be nourished, that can be watered, it can have a fertile soil. We have to create a fertile soil within ourselves. Then that seed of love, that seed of wisdom sprouts. So this was one aspect of however I tried to present it in a nutshell, try to condense it and dilute it, make it as easy. Because ultimately the message is very easy, but the intellectual people need very complex, they need complexity. So for them the masters also have complexity, no problem. That's the philosophical complexity. But the message, the message is very easy. The practical message is extremely easy. So, said 15 minutes for some questions and answers. Sorry I crossed a few minutes, but still if there are any questions or anything that you would like to share, because I just went on and on and on and on, you know.
A few questions.
Yes.
So, you know, it's hard to word the question. So there can be a great deal of what feels like striving or grasping, even as one is trying to release striving and grasping. Even as, you know, you're like, okay, you know, this is all falling away, going this way, but yet the desire is a hope.
Yeah.
But that it also feels like it can be a another way of collecting things. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
accumulating?
Yeah. Particularly in the case of, on one side, we are trying to give up information, but then we end up reading the Yoga Sutras, the Upanishads, the Gita, and accumulating all this information again. So what's the point? But the point, I think, is that this is the kind of information that makes us aware. So with the help of, that is also, this question arises again and again, that also in the context of desires. We are trying to give up desires, but then at the same time, we are working with other desires, But that is how we have to work, that is how we have to proceed. With the help of fewer good desires, beneficial desires, we transcend many. We raise beyond many unnecessary or even harmful desires. So this is just like when we use a ladder, we grasp one rung just to leave the previous one. We grasp this one, but we have to grasp it. But we don't grasp it to be here. We grasp it to reach here, then we grasp the next one, and then we leave this one. So this is how we evolve. We grasp one to leave the lower one, but we don't grasp it to be with it all the time. Then we have to grasp the next one to leave this one. And then a moment comes when we have reached the top of the end of the ladder, which is the top of the house or whatever you call it. When we reach there, then we leave everything altogether. Then we don't need to grasp anything anymore. But in the process, it seems like we are talking about unloading, and yet with the help, because suddenly that sudden jump from the all into nothing, into that nothingness, into the absence of everything, that sudden leap is easier if it is done gradually. And for that, that is how the masters, they at least, with some people, due to their practices, what the masters would say, the practices of their past lives, they are prepared to such an extent that they can take the final leap and just be from the awareness of the many or the all into the awareness of the absence of everything. But otherwise it is a gradual step-by-step process. So the same thing that when you were saying that on one side it seems about releasing, but then it's also like grasping. That's completely fine, because we are grasping to release this. We are grasping this to release this. Then we have to keep on working with our awareness. If that is what happens, people come to the Vedas and then they grasp at the Vedas. This is the reservoir of wisdom, ancient wisdom, great knowledge. This is all there is, they really grasp it. But that is what happens to a religious person, as a religious person, we grasp at the Bible, at the Quran, at the Bhagavad Gita, at the Vedas. We grasp it. The Vedas would say, yes, grasp at me for a while, but then just the grasping of these teachings is needed so that the essence of those teachings can be drawn out. And that essence is a living essence within oneself. When that has been drawn out, after that the book becomes meaningless. Tyajed grantham asheshata. This is again one of the Vedic sentences. Leave aside the books, the texts. After you have taken out palalami vadhanyarthi, like after removing the husk and taking out the seed, because that is what I needed. I just needed the seed. But it was together within a husk. So I brought it at home together with the husk. Then I remove the husk. I take the seed, and after that I throw away the husk. So the teachings, the words, they are like that husk. At some point, first we grasp them. And then at some point, the moment we start becoming fanatic, that is the moment when we realize that now we have started grasping at it more than what was required. And in that moment, all effort needs to be made to throw it away. And that is, now I'm just saying this in the context of the Vedas, but it is about everything. It is the same thing. So we grasp at something because it has a use, we grasp it, and after that, we have to go beyond it. We have to grow beyond it. Does that answer?
Yeah.
You can, we have another 2 days till we will meet again on the 22nd. Same time, we will meet here. You can think about what we have talked. If you would like to share something, if you would like to say something, if any questions come up in relation to what is usually known as the philosophical aspect of yoga, because that is what I deal with. The philosophical aspect of yoga, whatever that means. So if you have any questions about the philosophical aspect of yoga, then we can discuss it in our next session. Is that okay? So should we leave it here? Okay. So we conclude with a prayer that I always recite at the end of all my sessions, and this is because it brings together what we talked about. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah. May all in this world experience joy and happiness. Sarve santu niramayah. May all be free from diseases and suffering. Sarve bhadrani pashyantu. The desire that I nourish within myself, again, not giving up all desires. There are also good desires which need to be nourished, and this is a good desire that needs to be nourished. Sarve bhadrani pashyantu. May all see, which means experience, what is beautiful, what is inspiring. Sarve bhadrani pashyantu. Ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. The desire that I nourish is this, that may no one in this world experience suffering, pain, and sadness. So this is the meaning of this mantra from the Vedas. सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। Thank you very much. So next time we can start with question and answers, and then
whatever direction it takes.
Yes, yes.
It will take a U-turn.
It will take a U-turn.
I think it's going to take us to Kashi.
It is going to take us to Kashi. Yes.
Siddharthi,
Yes.
You have expressed who you are through what you spoke and your presence, but also for them to know a little bit more about you. Can you please share your background? Just your introduction, and in whatever ways you feel, okay.
Okay. Should I say?
I know it's tough, right?
It's tough. I was blessed. That's all what I can say. That I have been blessed in so many ways that I can't even count it or think about it. And why was I blessed in so many ways? I have no idea, but I happened to take birth into a family of yogis, where my father was a practitioner of yoga, my mother was a practitioner of yoga. So from childhood, I was blessed to be in this environment. Initially, a few years of my life were spent in Switzerland, then in England, few months. Then my father decided to come to Rishikesh because he wanted me to have this kind of education. So at the age of 4.5, he decided that we should move from Switzerland to Rishikesh. We had no idea, we didn't know anybody. We didn't know anybody in Rishikesh, and we just walked from Solan, which is around 200 kilometers, with me, 4.5 years old. We walked for 2 months on foot, and we reached in 1985, we reached Rishikesh around the 25th of December. I still remember it was a very peaceful city, extremely peaceful place. I still remember the first glimpse of Ganga and the 2-3 lights that were reflecting in the water, and the rest was completely dark. Because when we came to Rishikesh, it was completely dark. Swamiji of Shivananda Ashram, Swami Chidananji Maharaj, had met my father in Assisi. Because he used to go to Assisi, my father used to like to go to Assisi very much. So they met there, and he has said, when you come to Rishikesh, then come to our ashram. He was not here, so they said, well, you have came unannounced, so we can give you a room for 3 days, but after that you will have to go. By that time, we realized that there is an Omkarananda ashram behind Shivananda ashram, and we knew that some people in Omkarananda ashram in Switzerland, so we went them in hope that we will find maybe a place for a few more days to live and see what are the possibilities here. So, and then that was it. We ended up being in Omkarananda ashram, and now 30 years have passed, and the dream of my father unfolded after that. He took me to one of the most ancient ashrams of this city, Kailas Ashram, which, though it is relatively unknown, I must say that indirectly it lies at the very source of the revolution of yoga that took place in the West, in the world, because some of the greatest masters, some of the masters that have gone, especially out of India, whether it is Swami Vivekananda, Swami Ramatirtha, Swami Shivananda, Swami Chinmayananda, Swami Dayananda, Arshavidya Gurukulam, who has his branches also in the United States. Many, not all yoga teachers, but I must say around 75% of the yoga teachers that took yoga out of India, they were somehow directly or indirectly related to this monastery. Either they studied themselves here or they studied from teachers that studied here. And he wanted me to study in this ashram, and that was the reason he wanted to come to Rishikesh. So I was for 12 years studying in this ashram with the head who was back then, and then I was teaching there for a while, teaching these texts to the monks that come from different parts of India to study. And then by the time my master left his body, I was editing their publications, I was writing books which were getting published for their publication. And by the time my master was ready to leave his body, he introduced me to another ashram, Swami Ram Sadhakram. He introduced me to Swami Vedabharati ji. It was because Swami Vedabharati ji wanted someone who can teach the philosophy of yoga in English. And usually in our monastery, English is not part of the curriculum. They don't teach English. So the monks there, they don't know English, and all the education is either in Sanskrit or in Hindi. Very few, if they have learnt English elsewhere, they know English, otherwise they don't know. So he told me that Siddhartha is good, you take him. So in 2006 I started going to Swami Rama's ashram. Initially I went as a teacher, the big teacher who has been invited from Kailas ashram, till I realized that actually I had a lot to study from Swami Vedabharati. So on one side I was teaching, on the other side I was also a student, and I was studying from Swamiji there. She has met him so many times. So like this, the journey, I'm still there in Swami Rama's ashram, still doing the same thing, whatever I'm doing here in front of you, that is what I do there. And at the same time, I try to learn from wherever. So I think over the years, back then, my master used to call me Acharya Siddhartha Krishna, the teacher. That is how people used to know me. But then I decided to remove Acharya, because I think the most important thing, and that is also something that I see in the yoga world. Yes, it is important to teach yoga. It is important for us to become yoga teachers. That is very important, because to be able to share with others, we need to have something with ourselves. But that label which is given to us, now we have become a yoga teacher, that is a very deluding label, because that is actually the moment where the journey of learning should start. That is the moment when we become student. So if you ask me to describe myself, I can just say that I'm trying to be a student of the yogas, of the yoga and the practice of yoga and the Vedas. That's all. By being a speck of dust at the lotus feet of the masters, the teachers. from whom they gave a lot, but I was capable only of holding a little bit within me based on the capacity. That's all. But if there are any specific questions. Yes?
I'd like to know what your daily practice is.
My daily practice, one of the biggest challenges that I have had is that I live with someone who has no daily routine or has his own routine. Let's put it like this. He has his own routine. It's my father. He lost his eyes to glaucoma. And that was in 1991. He decided not to get operated. That was his choice. So he didn't get operated. So gradually, first his left eye, then his right eye, he became completely blind. And what happened as a result of that over the years, that his day somehow ended up becoming a day of 25 hours. So that means approximately, I'm speaking about roughly, that if he falls asleep naturally, because he has no watch. He has no watch. And he rarely, if ever, asks about the time. He just follows his internal watch. So naturally he falls asleep 11 o'clock today, then he will fall asleep around 12 o'clock tomorrow. And then approximately 1 o'clock on the next day. And like this, so there are days when he sleeps throughout the day and is awake at night. And there are days when he sleeps at night with me. He sleeps and I can sleep with him. And during the day he's awake. So, but the days or the nights when he doesn't sleep, he makes my life not easy. Because then if he needs something, if he needs to go to he's dependent, So, and at night, during the day, there are other people who can take care of him, but at night, I have to take care of him. So then, though he doesn't disturb me, but some basic needs when they come up, then of course he understands. He is extremely understanding, but at the same time, when he needs something, then he has to. So, keeping a routine has been a very challenging thing for me because I live with him. So, but approximately whenever I wake up, the first thing that I try to do is do my asana practice, whether it is depending on the time that is available, 15 minutes, 1 hour, 1.5 hours, depending on the time that is available at hand. Even if it's just 10 minutes, it's fine. But at least just to do something regularly, at least that is what I try. And then after that, usually then during the day, according to whatever, I have to go to my work, come here, whatever, that changes from day to day. Then lunch is around 1 o'clock, and then a little bit rest in the afternoon. Then I work on my books. In the evening, we do. In the morning also, yes, I forgot to mention that when we wake up, we do a short prayer. Over the years, it has become quite short. In my childhood, it used to be 2.5 hours sometimes. My father we really had to recite the whole Bhagavad Gita, so that was 2.5 hours. But now it has become 15 minutes, 20 minutes. The main thing I think is to have it every day as part of our routine. Sometimes we recite the whole Bhagavad Gita. If the time permits, then we do that also. But then in the evening, usually I try to incorporate my few moments of meditation together with my asana practice in the morning. If not, then in the evening. And that is roughly, but the rest of the time just have to adjust according to the needs of my father when I'm with him. If he wants me to take him for a walk, whenever he wants it, I take him. Because if I tell him, should we go for a walk, it doesn't work. So it has to come from him. Whenever he wants to go for a walk. Otherwise, he feels less energetic, then it doesn't work. So when he feels the energy from within, then we go for a long walk. So it has to be a very, somehow my life has been a struggle between being spontaneous and yet also trying to stick to a routine, trying to bring a routine. Sometimes the routine also changes according to the plans of the day, like this. So it's a constant practical struggle that is there every day.
That's karma yoga.
That's karma. That's karma yoga. And I think that is the most important thing. And everything then, as I said, devotion, love, deeper understanding, all that joins it. There is no need of running away from it. But whatever we are doing, it is incorporated into it. So that is the routine. But generally, the routines at the ashramas, for example, at the monastery where I was studying, there the routine was to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. There was a very strict routine. Wake up 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock we all had to come together for this half an hour prayer, 5 to 5:30, then a short break to drink some milk or something. Then at 6:30 the classes started till 9:30. Then there was 1 hour to clean our clothes or wash our clothes or whatever was required. Then at 10:30 was lunch. Then till 2 o'clock it was day rest. Then afternoon rest after lunch. Then from 2 to 5, again 3 hours studying. Then at 5 o'clock everybody went into the forest just for an evening walk. Then they used to do these forest walks. Used to go into the forest or to the Ganga. We were not allowed to go into the city. By rule, we had to go into the forest or just along the Ganga, but not. Students sneaked away, but we did. I did. But students are students. But the ideal thing was actually to ask for permission and then go, which we rarely did.
I would say it was from ideal to ideal. It was your deal.
It was, yes, ideal to ideal. Yes. And yes, then in the evening at 7, then everybody had to come together again for the 1.5 hour evening prayer, Arati, from 7 to 8:30, then dinner till 9 o'clock, and then 9 o'clock. Everybody goes to rest so that we can wake up at 4 o'clock. So that was a very strict, rigorous routine. But again, because I was in the monastery, but then I was also with my father here. Sometimes my father was there with me in the monastery, or I was at night here. So I had always this 2 different realities that I had to live in, that very rigorous routine, and here the scene was different. But somehow, still I find that my father, whatever happens, he has this strange internal thing that even if he would fall asleep at 12, he would still wake up around 2 o'clock. And from 2 to 4, sometimes from 3 to 5, sometimes from 4 to 6. I'm talking very approximately, but in these hours I have mostly always seen him awake and sitting. Very rarely if I myself wake up during those hours, I mostly always see him awake, even if we are traveling, even if that is somehow an internal.
He's meditating all the time?
Yes, Yes, he does his japa, or he's just. Earlier in my childhood, I used to see him with a rosary. Now the rosary is not always there, but I just see him sitting. And that is, in my childhood, that used to be the time when he used to disturb me the least, so I could sleep the best. So, yeah.
He has been teaching you Yoga Nidra from childhood. Right? Let's put it this way.
Let's put it this way.
Let's put it this way.
Let's put it this way, yes.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. See you again
Yes.
on 22,
Yes.
the 22nd. Yeah, same time.
Sayana